Let's go to the college football slate. There's not a single game featuring a matchup of top 25 teams, which is pretty crazy. And in fact, we may have already had one of the most entertaining games with Coastal Carolina on the road against App State. I had the over. There were only 3 points scored in the fourth quarter. Not at all bitter about that. I looked like I was completely in the house there with a win. But three games that at least are somewhat intriguing to me. LSU at Ole Miss. Ole Miss a rounded 9.5-point favorite despite Matt Corral's overall health status unclear. Clemson at Pitt. Pitt is a 3-point favorite. Clemson has not been an ACC underdog that I can remember in what feels like forever. And then Oregon at UCLA. UCLA around a 2-point favorite. I am on UCLA, Pitt, and LSU this week. I'm taking LSU plus the points, Pitt and UCLA to cover. Agree or disagree with those picks? How would you assess those matchups?
Oh, well, the Clemson game I think is fascinating for a variety of reasons. And to kind of put in historical context, the last time that Clemson was an underdog against an ACC foe was back in 2016 when it was Deshaun Watson going head-to-head with Lamar Jackson. So it has definitely been a while. We'll see how the Tigers respond in this kind of spot. When you look at this number before the season from a game of the year perspective, I mean, we would have been talking about Clemson, a 17.5-point favorite. So it's essentially a 3-touchdown market correction given Clemson's offensive struggles and Pitt's surge under Kenny Pickett's leadership. Problem for Clemson is when you look at some of their offensive outputs against FBS opponents, 21 or less in their 5 games. They, of course, broke out against South Carolina State. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh, and when you try and figure out what the Panthers have done, they haven't exactly taken on the most difficult slate of ACC opponents by any stretch of the imagination. But when you see the one common opponent, Clemson slips by Georgia Tech 14-8 in a game that, was broken up because of a weather delay, compared to Pittsburgh, who hangs 52 on the Yellow Jackets in that spot. But it's, again, one of those questions. Do you buy low on Clemson stock, or do you believe they still have room to fall that much further? What I've been surprised by is that there's been a little bit of over money that's come in the market here. And this may be a chance for a Pittsburgh team that's been blown out in back-to-back games against Clemson to exact that measure of revenge. So I don't see a case to be made for either side. Definitely going to be interested to watch, as I want to see if Clemson can do anything offensively, as they'll be a little bit healthier on their O-line. When you look at that Ole Miss LSU game, I've kind of sworn off betting LSU games going forward. And the reason I say that is because I don't think I can quantify the mental state of this team, week to week. They come out last week and, upset Florida as nearly a 2-touchdown underdog in a game there was very real professional money that came in on the Gators that drove that price tag up. This week, you've seen the money come in on LSU amid the speculation that you alluded to, talking about Matt Corral and his availability. Will Ole Miss have enough in the tank to go out there and dominate against a rival here? A game I probably don't want to tangle with. I'm curious to see, how Coach O, as a lame duck head coach, continues to handle this team going forward. And as far as the Rose Bowl is concerned, the biggest storyline here will be Joe Moorhead being back on the sidelines for Oregon. The last 2 weeks, he hasn't been in the mix. He, was the OC Friday night, last Friday against Cal, but called plays from the booth. And you could see how disjointed they were, getting some of their personnel groupings in. Mario Cristobal said they couldn't play with tempo. And for Oregon's loss against Stanford, Moorhead had emergency surgery, so he wasn't with the team there. Curious to see if Chip Kelly can get his measure of revenge against Oregon and knock them out of even being a dark horse national, college football playoff contender. So for me, if that game got out to 3, I'd make a case for Oregon, but otherwise don't want to tangle. The one game I think that's intriguing for casual bettors when they look at the number, though, Clay, is the game taking place in Ames, where Iowa State will host Oklahoma State. Yep. And folks look at it and they go, well, Oklahoma State's undefeated. They're catching 7. How could this be possible? This is a game that'll make me look like a genius or a jackass, and typically I end up more in the latter category.
Join the club.
But I make Iowa it's probably guilt by association. I'm not sure I was grouped into being a jackass until I started working with you about 10 years ago. I make Iowa State a heavier favorite than even the market in this spot. When you look at their 2 losses, I mean, they dominated the stat sheet against Iowa, just were unable to execute. And even in the 2-point loss against Baylor, they were significantly better than that 31-29 scoreline indicates. I mean, this is still a top 10 program as far as net yards per play. And what I mean there is from an offensive yards per play standpoint, they're significantly better than what they give up on the defensive side. And they've been great at containing explosive plays. I don't have a lot of confidence in Spencer Sanders consistently driving the football, dinking and dunking his way to victory, double revenge working in the Cyclones' favor. And I think this is where Iowa State reminds us why they were picked by many to be in the thick of things as far as the college football playoff was concerned. A loss here would eliminate him from the Big 12 title race, at least for all intents and purposes. I think we get the best from Matt Campbell and company. I like the Cyclones to win this game by double digits.
I am on the opposite side of that one. Not a big surprise. Here are my other college football picks. So in other words, I'm on Oklahoma State. Northwestern plus the points at Michigan. Navy plus the points against Cincinnati. I'm taking the over. The number's all the way down to 39.5, which is almost unheard of in a college football game. Wisconsin at Purdue. I just mentioned that I like Oklahoma State plus the points. I like BYU on the road against Washington State. I've already mentioned that I like UCLA, Pitt, and I like Vanderbilt plus the points against Mississippi State. I like LSU, I just mentioned, and I'm taking Tennessee and South Carolina plus the points on the road against Alabama and Texas A&M, respectively. Anything that jumps out at that list, by the way, you can go check those out. I put them up, my college football picks, every single Wednesday on Outkick.
When you look at the Tennessee game, I'm going to be interested to see if it's Hendon Hooker under center or if it's Joe Milton. If it's Joe Milton, I would want no part of the underdog. But I do think the Vols can hang around and at least keep this game competitive. My number is a little bit shorter than what's being offered in the market. My biggest fear, though, is that if Tennessee's offense can't get going early and they're going to play at this high-octane pace, that game could be 21-0 in the blink of an eye, given all the energy Tennessee had to exert last weekend in their near miss against Ole Miss. So no qualms with the side that you're betting there. South Carolina, Texas A&M, Zeb Nolan takes over for Luke Doty. I don't think it's a major change as far as an overall power profile is concerned, but I can see also going under the total, definitely correlated to the underdog. I think A&M's defense can clamp down and hold the Gamecocks in check, and I think South Carolina will at least be able to sell out and stop the run a bit more effectively than we've seen. When you look at the Michigan Northwestern game, this one is interesting for a variety of reasons, because if Michigan's able to win, it'll set up a showdown against an undefeated in-state rival in Michigan State, I believe, the following week. So if Michigan were to get up 3 touchdowns, I can't imagine Coach Harbaugh is going to try and pile it on against the Northwestern team that we've seen in the past be able to put forth some pretty lively efforts. I just don't know if the horses are there. As far as Cincinnati and Navy, hey, you just need Navy to put up 10 to 14 points and hope they can put together a 6 or 7 minute drive to shorten this thing. But clearly a far cry from what we've seen from Ken Niumatalolo's program in recent years. So for me, I don't really see major disagreement. I'm not on any of the same sides. I guess the biggest one that we're opposed on is that Oklahoma State, Iowa State.
Anything, and by the way, I like the under in that Texas A&M game against South Carolina as well. You mentioned it. I meant to mention that I like the under as well. Anything in the college football landscape other than those games we just ran through that stands out to you or that you're paying a great deal of attention to?
Yeah, the main thing that I'm really unhappy about is what the hell is going on from a scheduling standpoint.
Yeah.
The latest kickoff we have is 7:30 Eastern. You have no Mountain West Showcase games. You have nothing in the Pac-12. And then, sure, if you want to count Hawaii, New Mexico State, I guess you throw that in the mix. I'm trying to figure out why Nevada and Fresno State isn't the late game on FS1 instead of being on FS2 nestled in to the mid-afternoon showcase, especially given everything that's at stake and arguably the best quarterback matchup, especially as group of 5 programs are concerned there with Jake Hayner against Carson Strong. But one game in the Mountain West between San Diego State and Air Force. I like the Aztecs here plus the points. I think they win this game outright. I know San Diego State didn't score an offensive touchdown during regulation against San Jose State, a game they won in overtime, but they made a quarterback change. I think they're better in the trenches, both on the offensive and defensive line. And to be quite honest, the game means more to San Diego State. Air Force is in control in the Mountain Division, and a loss here wouldn't really do much to try and diminish those hopes, given they have the tiebreaker at this point against Boise State. Meanwhile, a loss for San Diego State would mean they were in must-win territory going forward, because it appears it'll be a 3-horse race between Fresno, Nevada, and San Diego State to come out of the Pacific. So that'd be a game in the group of 5 that I would look to attack with the Aztecs plus the point.